It was supposed to be a quiet morning on the Venetian coast. Fishermen mended their nets, children played by the docks, and Isabella, a young noblewoman of just 20, watched the sunrise from her balcony, unaware that this dawn would be her last taste of freedom. Then came the sound. Not thunder, not wind, but drums. The horizon filled with black sails, Ottoman corsair ships, cutting through the water like shadows of death. The villagers froze. They had heard rumors of raids, of women vanishing, of towns burned to ash, but they never believed it would reach them. Within moments, chaos erupted. Bells clanged. Men shouted. The sky darkened with smoke. Soldiers stormed the harbor, their armor glinting with sunlight and blood. Screams pierced the air as fire spread across the town. Isabella ran through alleys choked with smoke, clutching a silver cross around her neck. But fate was faster. Rough hands grabbed her, dragging her to the shore. Her mother's cries faded into the roar of flames. She was thrown among dozens of other captives, men, women, children, all bound, trembling, pleading. The corsairs moved with chilling precision. These weren't random savages. This was business. The slave markets of Constantinople paid handsomely for beauty, especially for women of the West. As the ships pulled away, Isabella looked back at her burning homeland. The smell of salt and smoke clung to her skin. She whispered a prayer, but even heaven seemed silent. Days turned into nights. The captives were packed into the dark hold of the ship, chained together. The air was thick with sweat, tears, and hopelessness. Some prayed, some cursed, some simply stared into nothing. Every sunrise meant another day further from home, and closer to the empire that would strip them of everything. One night, as waves pounded the hull, an old woman whispered to Isabella, "Don't speak your name. They will take it from you soon enough." And so she stopped speaking, stopped crying, stopped believing rescue would come. When the ships finally reached Constantinople, the captives were led out in chains beneath the golden domes of the city, where their worth would be measured, their identities erased, and their fate sealed forever. What awaited them there was far worse than death. After weeks at sea, the black sails finally reached the heart of the Ottoman world, Constantinople, the city of gold and sorrow. As the prisoners stepped off the ships, chains clinking against the stones, the city seemed to shimmer before them. Majestic mosques, marble palaces, and markets that stretched for miles. But for Isabella and the others, it wasn't paradise. It was the gate of hell. They were herded like cattle through narrow streets. The air smelled of spice, sweat, and sea salt. Crowds gathered, whispering as the captives passed. Pale women with sunburned faces, their clothes torn, eyes hollow from fear. Children pointed. Merchants smirked. A few noblemen on horses watched in silence, evaluating. They arrived at the Avrat Pazarı, the women's market. Here, beauty had a price. One by one, the women were displayed, forced to stand on wooden platforms under the scorching sun. Traders shouted in Turkish and Arabic, calling out their features: fair skin, blue eyes, educated, fit for the Sultan's court. Each word was a knife to Isabella's soul. She remembered her name being called once with love. Now it was being auctioned. An old merchant approached, his robes heavy with gold embroidery. He lifted her chin, examined her face, her hair. "Perfect," he murmured. She flinched as he handed a pouch of coins to the corsair captain. Just like that, she belonged to someone else. Inside the merchant's carriage, Isabella saw the city pass in flashes. Bazaars, mosques, palaces, all gleaming under the sun that mocked her pain. The man spoke little. Finally he said, "You are going to the palace. You should be grateful. Others go to worse places." She turned her head away. Grateful? For what? For losing her world. That night, the captives bound for the imperial harem were gathered in silence. A black eunuch with cold eyes inspected them once more. "From this moment," he said, "you have no past, no name, no god but the Sultan." Isabella's cross was ripped from her neck. Her hair was washed, perfumed, veiled. When she looked into the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back, painted, silent, and broken. The palace gates opened, swallowing them whole. Behind those golden doors, power, desire, and danger awaited. And inside that glittering prison began a life far worse than any nightmare. The palace of the Sultan rose above Constantinople like a dream. Domes of gold, courtyards filled with fountains, walls carved with verses from the Quran. To outsiders, it was the center of power, beauty, and divine rule. But to the women taken inside, it was something else entirely. A gilded cage. Isabella and dozens of others were led through marble corridors lit by oil lamps. Eunuchs guarded every archway. Silent, watchful, merciless. No one spoke. No one dared. At the end of the corridor, the women were stopped before a massive brass door. Beyond it lay the imperial harem, the most secret and forbidden part of the empire. When the door opened, the scent of rosewater and sandalwood filled the air. Music drifted faintly from somewhere deep inside. It looked like paradise, but every paradise hides its serpent. A tall woman in silk robes appeared, her face veiled, her eyes sharp as a blade. She was the mistress of the harem, the keeper of its rules and secrets. Her voice cut through the silence. "Forget who you were. You are property now. The Sultan's will is your only law." From that moment, names vanished. The women were given new ones, Turkish, Arabic, chosen to please the tongue of their masters. Isabella became Layla. She whispered it once, and it tasted like ashes. They were taught to walk, speak, and serve with precision, to sing softly, smile beautifully, and obey without hesitation. The harem was an empire within an empire, ruled by whispers, jealousy, and fear. Every gift hid a trap, every smile a threat. At night, Layla sat by the lattice window of her chamber, staring at the Bosphorus below. The city sparkled with torches, but she could see only darkness. In the distance, ships drifted toward the horizon, toward home. She wondered if her name still echoed there. Did her mother still pray for her? Did anyone even remember? Days became weeks. Weeks, months. Some women disappeared, summoned by the Sultan's attendants, never to return. Others rose in rank, becoming favorites, wielding beauty like a weapon. But for Layla, every day felt the same. A battle to keep her soul from vanishing completely. One night, as she walked through the candlelit hall, she caught sight of a mirror. The woman reflected back at her was regal, silent, almost royal. But behind the painted eyes lived a ghost. And in that reflection, Layla finally understood. This was not a palace. It was a beautiful prison where freedom cost everything, even your name. Morning came quietly in the Sultan's harem, but there was no dawn for those inside. Only the endless glow of candlelight. Here, time was not measured by days, but by obedience. Layla, once Isabella, had learned to move without sound, to lower her gaze, to hide every trace of rebellion. The mistress of the harem watched everything, every glance, every breath, every word spoken too boldly. A single mistake could mean days in the dark cell, or worse, disappearance. Training began before sunrise. They were taught to dance, not with joy, but with precision. To sing songs in languages they barely understood, to pour wine without spilling a drop, to smile when their hearts were breaking. There were lessons, too, on history, poetry, the art of conversation. The Sultan's court valued elegance as much as obedience. "Beauty," said the mistress, "is not what you are born with. It's what you're shaped into. And so, day by day, Layla was reshaped. Her old prayers faded from memory. Her accent softened. Her faith, her language, her past, all dissolved like ink in water. At night, when the palace grew silent, she would whisper her real name, Isabella, under her breath. But even that sound began to feel foreign. The girl from Venice was dying, and the woman named Layla was taking her place. There were other women, too, from Spain, from France, from the Balkans, all trapped in the same gilded dream. Some accepted their fate, hoping to rise in rank, maybe catch the Sultan's eye. Others resisted, quietly, dangerously. But resistance came at a price. One woman, a Greek girl named Eleni, refused to bow during a ceremony. The mistress ordered her taken away. She never returned. Her room was empty the next morning, her belongings gone. Only a single white scarf remained, folded neatly on her bed. That was when Layla learned. Defiance was erased, not punished. She began to keep a secret, a hidden thread of her past tucked deep within her heart. A name, a memory, a silent promise. One day, I will escape. But even as she whispered it to herself, the harem was already claiming her. Its beauty, its rules, its power, every lesson, every breath, every look, all designed to break her, to make her forget she had ever been free. Months had passed inside the Sultan's palace, and Layla had learned the rules of survival. Speak little, smile always, trust no one. The harem was a kingdom of silk and shadows, a world ruled not by swords, but by secrets. Here, a whisper could destroy a life, a glance could start a war, and a single tear could be mistaken for weakness. Yet among the endless rituals and rehearsed grace, Layla began to notice someone, a guard, silent, watchful. His name was Kamal, one of the Sultan's personal attendants, sworn to loyalty, forbidden to even look at the women. But he looked, and once, she looked back. Their connection was wordless at first, a lingering glance, a subtle exchange of a fallen handkerchief, a look that lingered longer than it should have. In the nights that followed, they began to steal moments, short, dangerous conversations in the shadow of the garden walls. He told her about the world beyond the palace, the sea, the markets, the freedom she had forgotten. And for the first time in years, Layla laughed. But love, in the harem, was treason. The mistress of the harem noticed everything. Rumors began to spread. Jealous women whispering about the Venetian girl who thought herself special. One evening, a favorite of the Sultan, a woman named Harem, approached her. Her beauty was cold as steel. "You think love will save you here?" she hissed. "Love is a luxury for free women, and you are not free." Days later, Kamal was gone. No explanation, no farewell. The corridors seemed emptier, the air heavier. Layla asked no one, but her heart already knew the truth. He had been discovered. That night, she was summoned to the mistress's chamber. The older woman poured wine, silent for a long time. Finally, she said, "You must learn, child. In this world, love is not forbidden because it is sinful. It is forbidden because it makes you remember who you are." Tears burned behind Layla's eyes, but she didn't let them fall. That would have been weakness, and weakness had no place here. From that night on, Layla changed. She smiled more, spoke less. She became graceful, composed, exactly what the Sultan's court wanted her to be. But inside, something in her had broken. The girl, who had once dreamed of freedom, now dreamed of nothing at all. And in the silence of the palace, where desire and danger slept side by side, a new game of betrayal was just beginning. The palace that once shimmered like a dream now felt colder than ever. After Kamal's disappearance, Layla moved through the marble halls like a shadow. She spoke to no one, smiled for everyone, but every night she could still hear his voice. Soft, warm, promising freedom that would never come. And then the summons came. A messenger in black robes appeared at dawn. "The Sultan requests your presence," he said. It was not an invitation. It was a verdict. Layla was taken through corridors she had never seen before. Narrower, darker, quieter. At the end stood a door carved with golden vines. Beyond it, the Sultan's private chamber. He did not look at her as she entered. He spoke softly, but his words cut deeper than any blade. "You were brought here to serve, not to choose. Love," he said, "is rebellion." He turned away, his eyes cold as glass. "The man is gone," he continued, "and you will forget him." Then he gestured toward the guards. "Take her to the tower." The Tower of Silence stood behind the palace gardens, hidden, isolated. No music, no sunlight, only the sound of dripping water. It was where women who defied the rules were sent to disappear. Days turned to weeks. The air was thick, the floor cold, her food scarce. But the true torture was not hunger. It was memory. In the darkness, her mind replayed every moment with Kamal. His smile, his words, his promise. And slowly, she began to understand why they feared love more than death. Because love made you remember you were human. One morning, the mistress of the harem visited her. The older woman looked at Layla, eyes unreadable. "You could have been powerful," she said. "You could have ruled this place. But you let your heart rule you," Layla whispered, voice trembling. "Then I am still free." The mistress froze for a moment, and then, without a word, she turned and left. That night, the guards came again. Layla was released, not pardoned, but forgotten. She was sent to the lower quarters of the harem, where the unwanted and the broken lived out their days unseen. But in her silence, something had changed. They had taken her name, her freedom, her love, but not her will. Deep inside, beneath the layers of pain and obedience, a fire still burned, and one thought kept her alive. If love is rebellion, then rebellion is the only way to live. The days in the lower quarters bled together like faded ink. Silence, chores, shadows. The women there were ghosts, forgotten by the Sultan, invisible to the world. But Layla was not a ghost. Not yet. She still carried a piece of the girl who once stood on a Venetian balcony, watching the sunrise. Isabella. That memory had survived chains, markets, love, and punishment. It burned quietly inside her, a light the darkness could not smother. And now, that light began to whisper one word: escape. One night, a storm swept over Constantinople. Rain hammered the roofs. Thunder rolled across the Bosphorus. Guards sought shelter. Candles flickered out. It was as if heaven itself was giving her a sign. Layla moved silently through the corridors she once served in, her feet remembering every turn. She knew the guards' rotations, the doors that creaked, the ones that didn't. In her sleeve, she hid a small piece of metal, a stolen hairpin sharpened into a key. At the garden gate, she froze. The smell of wet jasmine filled the air, heavy and alive. Freedom was just beyond that wall, 100 steps away. But freedom had a price. A voice came from behind her, soft, trembling. "You don't have to run." It was one of the younger women, eyes wide with fear. Layla turned to her and whispered, "If I stay, I die every day. If I go, I die once." She slipped through the gate, into the rain. Her bare feet splashed through mud, her breath sharp in her chest. Every shadow felt like a hunter, every gust of wind a warning. Behind her, the palace loomed, vast, golden, and merciless. A shout rang out, then another. Guards had seen her. Layla ran. Through alleys, through gardens, through the storm that tore at her veil. She reached the harbor where small merchant boats rocked against the docks. A sailor, startled by the drenched woman, raised his lantern. "Please," she gasped. "Take me across." "Anywhere," he hesitated. Then, seeing the terror in her eyes, he nodded. Within moments, the boat drifted into the dark waters, the palace fading behind them. As dawn broke over the horizon, the first light touched her face. She smiled, weak, trembling, for the first time in years. But fate, cruel as ever, had one last hand to play. From the fog, Ottoman ships appeared, patrols. The sailor whispered, "We can't outrun them." Layla looked toward the endless sea, and with tears in her eyes, she whispered her real name one last time. Isabella. Then she leapt into the water, her chains finally breaking as the waves closed around her. No one knows if she drowned or reached the shore, but her story lived on, whispered by sailors, told in secret by women who dreamed of freedom. Because even in death, Isabella had escaped. They say the sea remembers everything, every whisper, every sin, every soul that tried to flee. Weeks after the storm, a body washed ashore on the coast near Galata. A woman, pale and silent, her wrists scarred but free of chains. No one knew her name. No one came to claim her. The fishermen buried her beneath a cypress tree overlooking the water, and the wind that night sounded almost like a sigh of peace. But that was not the end. In the harem, whispers spread like wildfire. They said a woman had escaped, that she had defied the Sultan himself. They said she had leapt into the sea rather than live in gilded captivity. Some called her mad, others called her brave. But the younger women began to hum a tune in secret, a lullaby in a language long forbidden. Italian. Chi ama vive, chi teme muore. Those who love, live. Those who fear, die. That song became a spark, a whisper of rebellion, and soon even the walls of the palace could not silence it. Years passed. The Sultan grew older, the empire colder, but the legend of the western ghost of the harem survived. Travelers in Constantinople spoke of a spirit that appeared by the sea during storms. A woman in white, her hair tangled with salt, her eyes filled with fire. They called her Layla of the waves. Some said she guided lost sailors to shore. Others said she dragged cruel men into the depths. But in truth, perhaps she was neither ghost nor myth. Perhaps she lived. Perhaps the sea carried her to another shore, another life, another name. No one could prove otherwise. Centuries later, historians uncovered a small grave under that same cypress tree. The marker was almost gone, the name erased by time. But carved faintly into the stone were two words. In Italian, sono libera, I am free. And that is what they never understood. The chains they placed on her body could never touch her spirit. The palace that owned her name could never own her soul. In a world that treated women as possessions, Isabella, Layla, became something far more dangerous. A symbol, a story, a warning whispered through generations. The sea takes what men try to cage.